Hello and welcome to Dawnings. This is your host, Dawn Stillwell. And today we are winging it on the subject of appearances and acceptance. Growing up in the 70s and 80s, it was ingrained in me as a child that we were not to speak of anything that happened at home that might not sit well with the neighbors. My parents wanted us to show ourselves to be a healthy and happy and well-adjusted family to the outside world. We were not all that, but that's how they wanted us to present ourselves to the world. And for the most part, we did. We didn't know any better. We went out and, when we were little, we didn't cuss, we didn't swear. We were fairly well behaved. We dressed in clean clothes. And, we were fairly, feral, because we leave after breakfast and only come home for lunch and only come home for dinner. And then after dinner, you came home when the streetlights came on, kind of deal. That we grew up in that generation where we basically raised ourselves. And I'm not dissing that. I had a great childhood. And there's something to be said for allowing children to manage themselves because they learn how to get along. And they learn how to negotiate. And there's just a lot of benefit back to appearances. So I'm speaking of appearances in how people present themselves in public. And I also want to touch on the topic of acceptance. So for appearance's sake, there's a lot of people who don't live authentically because they are afraid that if people knew who they really were, they wouldn't be loved or accepted. That is a shame because we are all so incredibly different and we each bring something special to the table. Each one of us has unique abilities and gifts and skills that I believe reflect a very special facet of God. In every one of us, each one of us could be considered a facet of God. And my own facet, I'm not even sure how to describe it, but I know I bring something a little unusual to the table that maybe other people don't. And I have friends that are also unusual. I love that I've found my tribe because it's so great to be a weirdo in this world and have your own little pack of weirdos to run around with. And so many of us have felt that we would not be accepted if we did not present ourselves in a certain way. And I just want to take a moment to encourage you, if you find yourself in that position where back certain parts of yourself, parts that you love, but maybe you think other people won't love. And the thing is that if you don't show those parts to people, how are you going to find your tribe? How are you going to find those other people who are like-minded or not like-minded, who are into the same things that you are? That's where appearing like everybody else can be a detriment. Oh, when we are children, we go to school and of course we want to feel included. We want to feel accepted. So we kind of go along with the crowd and try to fit in. And that's unfortunate because our education system and even our family systems kind of encourage us to do that in some ways. And we don't get to learn to walk in the fullness of who we really are from a young age. That, for me, that happened in middle age, where I finally got tired of twisting myself to try to be what everybody else wanted me to be and finally decided to say, well, the heck with this. I'm going to do what I want and in the way that I want and be the person that I want to be, and everybody else can either like it or lump it. I probably said it more colorfully than that to myself, but that was the gist of the idea. And people want to be accepted. We want to feel included. We need that sense of community. And in some ways, we've lost that. But we all want that sense of community. And I know we had a sense of community, or at least a stronger sense of community, when I was a child, when, I used to run the neighborhood with all the other kids in the neighborhood. And, you knew everybody's mom and dad, and they weren't afraid to put you in your place if you were getting a little bit out of hand. So it was like the whole village was there to help raise the children. And I see less of that now. And it's kind of a shame because we don't know our neighbors like we used to. When I moved to the town I'm in now, every neighbor on the street came to my front door and introduced themselves. And over time, I'd say half of the people have left the area and new people have come in. And we don't do that like we used to. Of course, we used to have one nice lady on the street who had the Grove Street picnic every year, and she invited all the neighbors to her backyard to have a potluck dinner. And that really helped to foster a sense of community here. But back to appearances and acceptance. And how many times have we judged somebody on their appearance? Maybe a homeless person, or somebody who was overweight, or somebody who was in some way different from you, and you judge them on their appearance. And the thing is, people know when they're being judged, and they don't like it. And yet humans, I think, are somewhat predisposed to being a little bit judgy. So it's something we all need to work on overcoming. But when you single out people because they're different from you, it doesn't foster a sense of community. And you're alienating people when really all they want is acceptance. I think that's all anybody wants, is to be accepted for who they are. And we should have the freedom to be who we really are and not fear that lack of acceptance. And I know for me, I'm finally at a point in my life where I have my group, my little group of weirdos that I hang out with, and I love them to pieces. And because I have them, I don't really care all that much what other people think of me. And you can love me, you can hate me. That's your business. It's none of my business what you think of me. But it took a long time to get to that point where I really didn't care, because I grew up as a people pleaser. And when you're a people pleaser, you twist yourself in knots trying to be what other people want you to be. And the thing is, if people are only hanging out with you because you will do what they want you to do, and you're doing that because you want their acceptance, that's not a very healthy dynamic. And I don't do that anymore, and I don't suggest other people do it either. Find your group. Find your little group of weirdos. But going further on the subject of acceptance, it's not just about accepting people for who they are. It's also about accepting situations for what they are. And a lot of us struggle with that because we are in a situation that we may desperately want to change. And you will wear yourself out mentally and physically trying to figure out how to change the situation, when really what you want is to change another person. And let me tell you this, people change when they want to change. And if anybody is changing because you want them to change, it is not going to be a lasting change, because you're making them change in order to be acceptable to you. And at some point, they're going to get tired of being someone they're not. And the flip side of that is where if you can just accept people for who they are and accept the situation for what it is, your life will become a lot more peaceful. Acceptance is the way to peace. When you are fighting against something that you say you don't want, you say you don't like, but it's outside of your control. The way to peace is through acceptance. Like truly accepting the situation for what it is. And at that point, I find you can usually get some clarity so that you can make decisions based on what is as opposed to based on what you want things to be. My philosophy now, after many years, is live and let live. If you're doing something that makes your heart happy, even if I don't like it, it's your life. You do you, I'll do me, and I try not to judge other people for what they do. I'm not always successful, but I try. And I'm out here doing what I want to do, trying to live my best life and trying to be the best version of myself that I can be. I think we all should have the right to do that. And if your upbringing was such that you don't feel the right to do that, well, then maybe a little soul work that you could choose to do to get yourself to the place where you think it's okay to follow your heart and follow your dreams. Acceptance is the way to peace. Maybe I need to make a t-shirt. Anyway, thanks for tuning in. Glad you could make it. I hope you'll tune again next time. Ciao now.